get started. We've got a very packed house today, so if I can have all your attention. I know I told everyone to start chatting again, but now I'd like to focus on me. Alright, tables. Okay, so look, we've got a packed agenda. I'm super excited about having you all here today. My name is Nicholas Kontopoulos. I'm part of the global customer engagement and commerce product marketing team based here in Singapore. We've assembled a really great team of individuals here today to take you through what I think is quite an exciting topic. So over the next 2 hours, I think we've got 2 hours, so we're going to be covering this agenda. The purpose of this workshop is to introduce you to design thinking. How many of you have been exposed to design thinking before? Okay, we've got a couple hands going up. So hopefully, if it's successful, you'll leave today with a deeper appreciation of what design thinking is. This is an introductory course. It's not meant to be for advanced design thinkers, although if you are, we're more than happy to have you here to share experience today. I'm starting off, my name, as I said, is Nicholas, but we've got a team that consists of Court, who will be driving most of the agenda today, helping facilitate. We've got Hiromi from Japan, all the way from Japan. She'll be helping with the customer journey persona mapping exercise with Court. We've got Varul from India, who's also going to help drive the design thinking circuit. And then we've got a couple of other my colleagues spread out across the table. So I'm going to hand over to Court now. We'll start the session rolling. If you've got any questions throughout the session, obviously feel free to engage us. Hopefully you know where the toilets are. They're over to the left side of the building here. And we will have a break for coffee in the middle, around the halfway point. Okay, over to you, Court.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. So he introduced where everybody came from except for me. So he was assuming I'm from Singapore. I'm not. My last name is Brebaert, and there's a lot of E's and A's in one word, and it's untypical for here, but very typical for the Netherlands, where I was born. I'm going to work with you today with this team, as Nicholas introduced, to introduce you to design thinking. Before we start, I want you to have a look at. I want you to have a look at this picture. What do you think this guy is going through? What's the first emotion that comes to mind? Annoyance, frustration, stress, hunger. Very good one. I'll tell you a story why he's a bit frustrated. This guy is a very hard-working guy, like all of you, and he's traveling around the globe to serve his customers and to meet his customers. And so he spends a lot of his nights in hotel rooms. And this guy, he loves to eat pizza. Okay, so when he comes back from his hard day of work, he orders in the pizza in his hotel room. And I forgot to tell you, this guy's not very big. This guy is more or less this size. Okay, so he cannot eat the whole pizza. That's frustrating him. Why? Because he's also very particular about the temperature of his pizza. So when he comes back the second day, he finds in his hotel room a half-eaten pizza that is cold. Now, he's also a bit of a lazy guy, so he doesn't want to take the pizza box down to the canteen and ask the waiters to heat it up. So this guy needs to think outside of his pizza box to come up with an idea, how can I, with the tools that I have available in my hotel room, how can I warm my pizza? This is what he did. And to me, this is innovation. Yeah? You're going to repurpose existing technologies for the benefit of your life. Cheap solution. Not necessarily. Innovation is not about very big investments or anything. This one tells you that story. And now let's have a look at innovation, because design thinking and innovation are very closely linked together, and we come to that in a moment. But first I want to talk about innovation. Why do we, or you as persons in your companies, why do we innovate? Give me some ideas.
To gain a competitive edge.
Correct? To differentiate yourself from the competitors? Yes.
Survival.
Sorry, say again?
Survival.
Survival, yeah, because if you don't innovate, Maybe your cost structure will rise, and you're not you're being outperformed by competitors, and therefore pushed out of the market.
Expand into new markets, new opportunities.
Correct. Because you want to introduce new revenue streams, and therefore you need to innovate, so you can go into new markets. All very valid reasons why we need to innovate. This guy on the picture also needs to innovate. He's a runner. He's also in competition. He needs to run 100 meters faster than 10 seconds. If he doesn't, he's a nobody in his sports, in his running sports. So he needs to innovate the way he eats and the way he trains, so that he builds the right physical or the right physics to do that as fast as possible. But that's not the only thing that's innovative. There's also some innovation in what he's wearing. And I want you to focus now on the shoes that he's wearing. Somebody has designed these shoes to make this guy faster. Now, imagine you are working for Puma or Adidas or let's say Nike. And you are charged, your job is to create shoes for running. What would be the things that you would think about? And I'll write, whatever you say, I'll write it down here on the picture. Light. Light. So the shoes need to be light. Okay. Comfortable. Flexible. Friction. Frictionless or less with less friction. Yeah. Performance. Okay. Stop
Need
here.
to look nice.
Nice looking. Okay. Fantastic. So indeed, that is what these designers are after, to make things faster, lighter, and more endurable. Now, you and we are also in the game of marketing and sales and customer experience. And we know that when you start to design something, where do you typically start to design a product? That is with your customer. Now, for Nike, is this the typical customer they have? Not at all. There are only 5 or 6 people that can run under 10 seconds to 100 meters. So you can design shoes for them, but it will never be a market. What do you think is the market for these brands? People like you and me. Now, the insight that most of these designers, and I'm not here to pick on any shoe brand, or I'll keep my hands off that, but the pitfall that these shoes designers fall into is that normally they are avid sporters. They have been in competition, etc. And they are creating shoes that do exactly that, what this guy is doing. What they forget sometimes is to get real insights from the customer. If I would do a poll around the world and ask how many people really like to run, a staggering 90% will say, no, I don't like to run. Think about this. 90% says, I don't like to run. So what should this be the design criteria for if you make a shoe? Or should you be thinking about something different? Something different. So what should a shoe designer be doing? Knowing that people don't like to run. You can stop designing shoes, and then they push outside them, and then they're not in the market anymore. What else? What can we think of?
Design it for walking.
Design it for walking. Okay, so but that's gonna change. That's gonna change the target group probably, because still people run. So they don't like to run, but they still run.
They still walk. They still need to walk.
They have the option to walk. My idea when I heard this story was, maybe they need to start thinking about how to make a shoe that is more enjoyable, that makes running more enjoyable. And you see some brands doing that already. Maybe with they attach some social media into the running. So like Nike has this band, so you can track where you run, and so at least you're running for a purpose. Some people may think. So, but the story I want to tell is that if you design something, you have to be very clear on who are your customers and what do they really need, and derive insights before you start making shoes lighter and faster. But that may nobody care about. Now, if companies that do that very well, they differentiate them from the competition. You see this cow is away from the herd. The whole herd of cows is eating the same type of grass. This cow has moved out and is fishing in a blue ocean rather than in a red ocean. Companies that have done that have taken innovation to make that move, and taking design thinking to understand what are the desires of their customers. And I'll come back to the definition of design thinking. What is design thinking? It's actually a method and a mindset to find solutions that have three characteristics. I'll put them here on the board here. First of all, they're desirable. Customers, if you build solutions, you want your customers to adopt it. It has to play into a need. If it doesn't play into a need, no chance your product will fly. It needs to be feasible. It means, is it technically, maybe the customer wants something, but technically you're not able to really establish that. Not yet, maybe in 5 years' time. The third circle there is viable. So are you able then to produce it at a cost that is lower than for which you can sell it into the market? Where those three overlap is what is called true innovation. Products that people want, that are technically feasible, and that are economically viable. And that is the sweet spot of what companies should be looking for. And design thinking, again, is a methodology and a mindset to find that sweet spot when you are discussing the future of your business. So, now go to the process, or what is it that we typically do to come up with those ideas that are that hit the sweet spot. And you can see it looks like a very linear process. It's not, by no means it's a linear process. It's a very iterative process. But what I want you to get from this slide, there are two different, distinct phases in creating solutions or solving the right problems. There's a problem space and there's a solution space. There's a very clear distinction between them. Because only if you know what kind of questions you want to get answered, you find the right solutions. And when you go through the problem space, normally we diverge in terms of, okay, what are all the challenges that we may have, and then we convert again to come up with the 5 things we really want to solve as a business. And only when we know that, then we start to create ideas to solve it, and we diverge again, and then we converge to come up with something that we call customer-centered design. Let me give you an example where things have not gone very right. What could happen if you're not following a process like this? Who can tell me what is the continent with the highest death rate of children under 1 year old? What do you think? Africa.
Asia.
Asia. It's actually Africa. In Africa, the percentage is staggering much higher than any other continent in the world. And so for scientists and doctors, that's a source of, let's examine that a bit. What is the root cause of that happening? And they found out that the single factor that causes children to die before they turn 1 is jaundice. Now, they all went to the same kind of university, and they know if you have jaundice, if you don't want your child to get jaundice, you put them in what they call an incubator. A little crib, if you don't know, with a lamp, and it transmits UV radiation to the baby, and then the body will react to it. They will create some vitamins that will get rid of the jaundice. So they don't have these incubators enough in Africa, and that's why that's causing a lot of problems. So what these scientists did, they saw something happening, they saw a trend, and directly they went into the solution space. which obviously was, okay, let's gather some money everywhere. We buy those incubators and we move them to Africa and we put them in the hospitals. And then, like real scientists, they're going to watch the death rate, expecting it to go down over time. And after a year, nothing happened. And after 2 years, still nothing happened. So how come? How come? We've taken away the major root cause. So what they did, they brought back those scientists back into Africa to look at how these incubators were being used, to find out that they were not being used. A lot of hospitals were lacking electricity infrastructure. A lot of hospitals where when spare parts broke of these incubators, they were not able to replace them. So this good intention was gone up in vain. Then they decided to change it. Okay, this is not working. How can we come up with something that is working in Africa and treat that root cause? They did a design thinking. And they went through a design thinking motion. And there was one defining question in that design thinking workshop, and it was by somebody who asked, "What is working in Africa?" That was a very interesting question. There must be some things that do work in this continent. And then they did some extra research and they found out that there's this particular car, this Toyota car, that drives all through the continent. And they find out that every other corner in Africa has a repair shop for this particular type of car. So then the second question, which was very interesting, can we make an incubator out of the spare parts of this car? Because obviously there's already an infrastructure with all these spare parts. And they did. They built a prototype out of this, with the lamps from the car, with a battery, as well as a prototype that's running on gasoline, so they can use it everywhere. And that is what they started then to industrialize and roll out in Africa. Okay. So it all comes down to ask yourself the right question in the problem space. The solution part will come. So we're going to run all kind of exercises today. You will see on the walls whiteboards, flip charts. We're going to make it a lot of fun today, but we need some. We need to have some ground rules, so to speak. Okay. Today is the day that we invite you to empathize. Think with your customer in mind. Empathize with your customer, even though it's not your real customer, but an imaginative customer. Empathize. And see what that does to the kind of ideas that you're generating. Yeah? So that's the one on the top. Think customer-centered. Have a beginner's mind. Let's try today to look through the eyes of a 3-year-old that has no baggage, that has no a lot of baggage from all how you perceive the world. But let's look at it as if you were a child, and everything is new and everything is awesome. Defer judgment. You'll be generating ideas, and the tendency of people is to judge other one's ideas. What does that do to brainstorming or to idea generation? It's very deteriorating, because people will stop generating ideas. So let's turn it around, and thus, if somebody puts in an idea, let's ask that person why they have that idea, so we can build upon each other's ideas. Be visual. Will be drawing stuff along the way. Collaborate, build on the ideas of others. And one of the most important one, I think, that's a lesson that we as mankind really need to go through, is it's okay to make mistakes. Always. In fact, we want to encourage making mistakes. The sooner, the better. Who knows this comedian Rock? Chris Rock. Who knows him from the US? Brilliant comedian, right? If he plays, if he throws a show in the US for months in advance, the whole place is booked out. Now, he's not the most natural comedian, we would say. So there was some scientists that wanted to find out why is Chris Rock so good at this? What it makes him different than all the other comedians? And they they concluded there was one thing that Chris Rock did very well, where a lot of comedians sat down, locked themselves up in a room and started to make jokes and started to practice it and then try it in or you know, doing their performance with the audience. Chris Rock takes ideas from everywhere and he tries them the next day in a small audience when he's doing stand-up comedians. And that's how he learns what works, what doesn't work. Some things he just throws away, and other ones he keep on iterating and keep on improving. And that made him he is not afraid to try and to fail. For him, there was no failure. That's not in his mind. Psychologists find out. So do that. Try to do that in a very safe environment as we are in today. Okay. Let's do the first exercise. I want you to take a pen and a post-it. Take your favorite color post-it. Mine is orange for the Netherlands. Take a pen that has a bit of a contradictionary color with your post-it, otherwise you cannot read what you're writing on your post-it. Don't take red and red. Or green and green, please. Okay, everybody has a post-it and a pen because I'm going to give you, for this one, first one, I'm only going to give you 20 seconds. I want you to design a chair for me. Okay, it's 20 seconds. It's counting already in my head.
Chair.
Who should we design it for?
In me. Very fantastic question, by the way.
What do you need it for?
You have 5 seconds left. Everybody has a chair? Okay. Show your chair to your neighbor. Just show it how it looks like. Okay, well done. I'm going to throw in a bit of information. I want somebody of you to ask me what is a comfortable chair. You started with that already. But so what do I want with a chair? What is a comfortable chair for me? Who can ask me that? Just ask me the same question.
What do you want in a chair?
Thank you for that question. So I'm looking for a very comfortable chair, and where I can lean my hands on the bars here, and it needs to be cushioned. That's really what I like in the chair. Okay, take another 30 seconds and design me my chair. Ten seconds left. Okay. Now show to your neighbor the difference between the first chair that you designed and the second Who cannot see the difference between the first chair and the second chair?
It's the arm.
Everybody. Okay? Why do I do this? Because there's a tendency, and technology companies are sometimes guilty of that, but I guess in your industry you have the same. That okay, somebody asks me something to do. This is the answer, right? So we jump immediately to the solution because I asked you to design a chair. Of course, you know what a chair is. The question is, thank you so much. What do you like in a chair? And if you don't ask that question, I'll probably not choose one of the chairs that you draw in the first cycle. I'll probably choose 60–70% of the chairs that you have designed in the second cycle. And if you were to sell it to me? Right? So that's the power of these kind of questions. Why is that? Because we have, when we are like the designers of shoes, we when we look at the world, we put some filters in the way we see the world. And if I'm an avid runner, and I'm a very good runner, for example, then I would design shoes just for that purpose. So we're always trying to confirm whatever we in what we say and what we do, what we believe. And that's not. I'm not saying that is bad, but if you want to design something that is customer centric, it can lead to very suboptimal results. And I think that is what we're trying to take away. When they asked Henry Ford, or when Henry Ford was explaining his way of thinking when he built the Ford 100 years ago, even longer than 100 years ago, and they asked him, hey, did you really know what your customers want? He said, yeah, there's one more aspect to it than knowing what my customers want. Because if I would have asked them what they wanted, they would ask for a faster horse. Okay? So there's a bit of a twist to this, where you also need to anticipate future requirements as well when it comes to understanding your customer.
Frame of reference.
And a frame of reference. Correct. Okay, that brings us to an exercise that we're going to run. I'm going to hand over to Raul. Raul will lead you through what we call a design thinking circuit.
Thank you, Kurt. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Doesn't sound like a very good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So, as Kurt said, it is design thinking really about a mindset, customer-centric mindset, and this whole design thinking process and methodology actually has several principles. There are several techniques that we use during the process. We possibly cannot run through all the techniques that we have, but over the next hour, probably less than an hour, we are going to take you through certain exercises which basically will, kind of familiarize you to the whole process of thinking. There are some techniques that we use. What we expect of you over the next, so first we will have about 35-40 minutes of those exercises. There are instructions for each team. They're on the table. We have facilitators, and may I please request facilitators to raise their hands so we can know you. We have, if you can identify yourself to your specific tables, I think that would be better. So ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for it?
Ready.
Okay, and the facilitators
Ready?
Yes.
are ready too?
Yes.
And Lorraine, are you ready?
Try to keep it ready.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, we'll just wait for
I'm
Eric
going to break it into two
to
groups of three.
get ready.
So you can make that quite as simple as you want.
On your stations.
Am I allowed to go?
Not yet.
Oh!
So you've got 6 minutes and your time starts now.
Here we go. So two groups. This one's really simple. First exercise, 3 parts. What's the question? First part of the exercise is using small sticky notes. We want to generate as many things as possible.
And then it'll
care what they say, it hurts so good. I don't wanna stop, I know I should, but let's do it again. One more time.
First of all, give yourselves a very big hand. And I think in the last 35 minutes or so, I think the number of ideas that you would have generated, I can tell you, I know you are never able to do that when you are thinking otherwise, right? And just imagine taking this back to your workplace, contextualize it to your specific problem, and then start using this this whole process. The number of ideas that you are able to generate in a very, very short span of time is just unbelievable. So before we move to the business end of the workshop, where all the heavy lifting, as Nicholas says, will be done by my colleagues Square and Hiromi, I thought we'll pause for a bit and just reflect on all the 6 exercises that we went through. And before I get down to doing that, I just wanted to first take a poll on, out of the 6, which one did you like most? I mean, how many of you liked the sketch it exercise, which was, I think, table 1, where one person was describing an image. The most liked one? I'm just saying, did you like, how many of you like this one? How many are there? Yeah, do you want to do a vote?
Yeah.
So sketch it. If sketch it was your most favorite one.
You can only raise your hand once.
The most favorite.
Most favorite. Most favorite, I've got 3. 3.
Hey, that's 5.
It was about 5. George was a tentative one, and then I'm not going.
How about the second one, which was a new sales tool where you pulled out objects out of a bag and then try to use it to sell products to your customer?
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12? That's 12. Let's see if it adds up.
Yeah. That's your number 1 favorite exercise, right? Okay. How about build your car?
About 10, yeah. 10, yeah.
And then we had the customer as the superhero.
1.
2.
2.
And this one had yes and yes.
Story.
I thought this was a very interesting exercise.
4, 5, 6. 6. Yeah. Okay.
And Eric, don't get worried. This is not a rating of the facility.
Okay, so the last one.
And the last one was the rapid prototyping, where you actually describe an experience
So
about
that's
somebody.
3. My bone, 4, 5. Yeah, so my bones have been. How much? 4? 5. Alright, so it was 50. Okay,
Perfect.
we've got 40 people. If we have 40 people in the room, that's roughly, yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. Approximately. Okay, so why don't we just quickly go through each one of them, try to figure out if there was a learning from each one of them. Before I just have a slide here and I can articulate, what was intended out of that exercise. But those of you said sketching was their favorite. Was there a learning that you took away from that exercise? Anybody?
Catch it is
Number 1, which is sketch it. Yeah.
I found that one easier because it was more just 2 people coming up with the idea, so it was easier to make it tie closer to the objective. Sometimes with the other ones, when there were more people, the ideas were getting pulled.
But sketch it was essentially about one person
Communicate.
blindfolded and the other person kind of describing a specific picture or object to him. So why don't we just quickly figure out? I think one of the key principles of design thinking, as I said, we had divided these 6 exercises into, 3 parts really, two each in each of those parts. They're called look, think, and do. Look is essentially about being able to develop insights about the customer or the end user of the product or the service or the challenge that you're trying to solve. And before I go there, I think this is stands. And I know since we didn't ask you to write your names, I don't know who made it, and now I know many people would have made it. This I think is almost a replica of this image. And more often than not, when we look at our customers or try to think about them, we look at them as a piece of demographic, a statistic, an age group, income group, stuff like that. What we typically do not think about is the emotional persona of the customer, right? And in a lot of cases, that probably is the core of who your customer really is. And this exercise, if you notice, most of the images essentially had an emotion associated. Not all of them, but most of them. And if you were not able to convey that emotion, I think the point was getting missed. So clearly, it requires a lot of intense observation and the power to listen, and also the ability to be able to ask the right. Because the person who is drawing needs to ask questions as well, right? If the person who is describing it to you has certain limitations, you can still extract that insight if you are asking the right questions. And of course, as I mentioned, your customer is not just the statistics; he's a living being, and there is an emotional persona associated. So if you look deeply, and as I said, the core of design thinking is, and it's the first step is to understand and create a persona of who your customer really is. So that essentially was the intended lesson that we Second one, the new sales tool. It is actually a bunch of very seemingly unusual objects inside a bag, and you pull them out and try and use that object as a sales tool to sell to your customer. I think this is really about lateral thinking, about making connections which seemingly are between unrelated things, and if you're able to do that, new insights emerge, which typically would not, because we're trying to think too logically. Your thinking is very sequential. Like one of the examples that Stuart used about a hospital. Did you use that one, or there was another one about this old age home, which was where a lot of people who lived there suddenly stopped eating over a period of time, and they couldn't figure. And the immediate knee-jerk reaction to something like that is change the menu. Right? That's the most obvious thing. But then they changed the menu, nothing happened. And then they got in some design thinkers, not from SAP, but design thinkers. And then they figured out it was really not, these were people, living beings, looking for attention. They had to totally redesign the way the food was actually served to those people without even changing the menu. The consumption went up, right? So sometimes what is seeming is not the real problem, and that was one of the intended objectives of this exercise. And the second, of course, is I said in the beginning, ideation on steroids. Don't judge an idea, just create as many ideas as you can, because the big idea may be one of them.
And thinking on feet, right?
Thinking on feet.
Yeah, whatever situation you get into, you make best out of it.
Okay, the third one is building a car for your loved one or your family member, and that I guess was number two in the ranking, right? So what learning? I mean, it was pretty straightforward exercise, right? You have to keep somebody in mind before you started designing something. And the second lesson really was being able to prototype or tangibilize an idea before it gets into production, right? So you kind of in the process, if you're able to kind of tangibilize it effectively, you have the opportunity to fail early and get out of that idea. I think those were the two lessons that we get out of that exercise. And prototyping is the third broad step, as I mentioned. Do really is, as I said, is about prototyping. So you create a persona, build insights, then you generate ideas based on those insights, and then you tangibilize the idea through prototyping. So that was the exercise. And of course, as I said, you can fail early, get out of that idea, get into another one quickly, and of course, the basic principle of keeping that loved one or the core customer or whoever the user of your service or product going to be at the core of it. So it was really not about just putting together some Lego blocks and building the best car, best looking car. It was about a car that person would really fancy. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Super customer. Again, the core principle: keep the customer at the core of the process, build a persona, develop insights, and develop another key word is empathy. Unless you empathize with the customer, try and get into his shoes, you will never be able to figure out what he really wants and what he really is. And of course, the physical learning was that building a visual persona of whatever you're doing helps you get a clearer picture of what you want to do. Okay, this one was not one of my favorites when we started off, but I think people on this table always had fun thinking laterally, creating some fantastic stories, taking on from a weird idea, making it more absurd at times. But it doesn't really matter. It is the key lesson that I learned from this exercise is, as a human being, we are kind of hardwired to say no, but right. In most people, in most scenarios, would never say yes and, which means they have a tendency to actually dispute any idea, even if they do not, really mean it, but they will always start saying no. But this exercise teaches us to one, not judge any idea. Okay? Take that idea, see if you can build on top of it before you reject it. Okay? So that's what that's the takeaway. And of course, through this whole process, unless you have a positive environment where the entire team is not trying to judge other people and other people's ideas, but trying to build on top of those ideas, I think that's really core to this. And also, lateral ideation. It doesn't matter which direction you're going to but keep moving, keep building on top of those ideas. That's what unrestrained wild creativity. Okay, rapid prototyping. It's about number last but one. Again, prototyping, as I mentioned, is about creating a tangible representation of your idea so that you can test it prior to it becoming too expensive to fail. And the second is, as I said, rapid prototyping, which means you can create multiple prototypes of ideas, and then you have many of them to choose from. So you actually, in some way, you are saying you have 100 different prototypes ready and to choose from. They are almost like finished products. And the other is, of course, when people were trying to describe this whole idea, first the idea of what a great meal is or a wholesome meal is, and then trying to create a visual imagery of what, that's the prototyping aspect of it. So I do see people, creating ambience around it, creating an expression of wow, what I mean, stuff like that. So that's really the takeaway.
One more thing about rapid prototyping that SAP experience a lot. Let's say a customer wants to see a product or maybe a report. If we come in with a report that is already built in code and looks very extremely fancy and we show that to a customer, what do you think the kind of feedback is that we get? I'll tell you, not so much. Why? Because they see that product as being almost complete, and they feel a bit obliged or they feel a bit hampered to give a lot of detailed feedback because they would assume that we have been spending all this money in it already. So what we're doing much more now than we in the past is we go to the customer with just a whiteboard or a piece of paper where we draw how that report would look like. And then you get much more collaboration because then they will say, hey, why don't you add in this field? Why don't we move out that? Why isn't it, this need to be a different color, or here need to be a traffic light? Or with low fidelity prototypes, you get much more interaction. So think about that for your own business and how prototyping can help you to interact with your customer earlier in the cycle before you launch products.
Increases ownership as well, right? From the customer's perspective. You are investing in your idea.
We're going to experience another exercise from now. In the last session, we experienced the exercise like we like to convey some mindset of design thinking. But from now, we're going to experience some tools you can use to really help generate ideas, which based on the deep empathy with the customers you have. This is actually the same thing called previously explained with 6 bubbles, like this one. Problem space and solution space. This is a more simple version. Maybe some of you might realize these details was outside of this room. This is a simple version of the same thing. So this look and think part refers to this problem space. So you can have insight of the customer. You will do deeper observation to the customer, like ethnographic researches, and you will get the insight of the customer. Then gather those insights to help to generate the unique ideas that can more appeal to those customers. Then, like you did in the exercises before, you do the prototype to convey the message to the customer as well, and also you can communicate your idea with the stakeholder inside your company, so that you can have early feedback from the stakeholders within the company, and you can also enhance your idea with the feedbacks from the customers and the stakeholders inside your company. So we are going to do some exercise related to this look and think part from now on. So as for look part, we are going to utilize the tools called persona. Some of you are from the marketing department or marketing area, and those people who are familiar with the ideas, but persona is to have artificial person who representing the typical user type you're going to approach to. And with this persona, you can have more empathy, better empathy or insights to the customer. So we will utilize this persona to generate ideas based on the deeper understanding of the customer. And after this, we are going to utilize the tools called customer journey map. And with this tool, you can have a viewpoint of the customer, and also you can have interesting ideas based on the understanding of the customers. Okay, so thank you. So we'd like to start with look part. As I said, we are going to utilize this, something called persona. Before moving on to the real exercise, I'd like to assign all the teams to some artificial company because you're all from the different companies, so it's difficult for you to work on a single challenges. So we prepare 6 different companies, and we expect all of you to become C-level people of those companies. So first, I'd like to ask you to assign CEO of the company from each table, and please come up to this area. So please decide CEO of your table. And
To do that, let me do this. Everybody raise your hand. Everybody point at the ceiling. Point at the ceiling.
okay, CEO.
Okay? And when I count 3, point to the ceiling. Everybody, please.
Point to the ceiling.
At a count of 3, you're gonna appoint the CEO. 1, 2, 3, go. Okay. Count the number of fingers.
Please count
Count the number of fingers. The CEOs come here.
Welcome, CEOs.
No paper.
Yeah, first question.
They're going to draw the companies.
Okay. Who wants to go first? Just pick one. Doesn't really matter. Just a bit of a gaming element. Here you go. You can look. And what we want you to
And then you
do,
can relax.
what you'll see is a name. What you'll see is a name of a company. And there's 6 different stations around here. And you take your group with you to that station, and you'll work on your persona. Okay, we'll explain you once you're at your board. We'll explain what we expect from the persona. Then there are also some stickers inside. The CEOs will put CEO sticker on their chest, and you can distribute the other roles to your team as well. Okay, you're gonna play as if you're the executive of that company. All right, go ahead.
Okay. First decide who's going to be CFO, CEO, etc. And please find the legislation.
Who wants to be a CFO?
John.
You want to be a CSO? You? CMO?
With the logo?
So I can go around and say, that's me. CHRO, who's an HR? Oh, it's only. You guys are joint COOs, so that means you're going to have to stick together, literally stick together.
And also try to find the related walls that has company names around here.
So this is who we are. We are the Robertson, Fasten and Moore.
The one over there.
Okay, okay, cool. Let me take pens.
They decide on the pictures of the make a picture of the person. Draw the
Okay, did you find the wall for your company? Yay!
Yes.
Yay! Did you find it?
I think they're also. I'll just make sure these guys do.
Okay.
Just pick anything.
Yeah. Do not spend too much time on deciding the food. It's going to be seen, blah blah blah. This is just a game, so just pick anything.
Okay, guys, move your attention back here. Move your attention back here.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the next thing we are going to do is create persona. So I ask all of you to start with having the persona's face and also the names. And please have a more emotional side. I mean, please go beyond the information of the just demographic facts. So you should have something like passions, his or her passions, hobbies, and motivation, desire, traits, and jobs to be done of this person. Those information will help you to go through all the journey and let those information tell you what is going to be his or her decision. So please try to make those parts as well. So I'll give you 6 minutes to complete.
Just before we start, is everyone clear on that?
Okay. Are you guys clear?
One persona.
One persona, yes. One persona. Please have the one persona. And actually, there is some information on this customer journey. Sorry, can I have attention? There is a context here. In the left part of this customer journey map, there is a company name here, and on the right side, you have a context. Like for example, this group, United Automobile Singapore, we have this context. The persona is looking for second-hand car. So please have persona who's more, associated with this context. Okay.
So 6
Yes.
minutes. 6 minutes to finish the persona.
Yes, just the persona. Okay, you can start.
You utilize the persona you just created, and what we are going to do is to capture the action in the context, from the first action to the end action, and we can also capture the mindset attached to the action, and also we will capture the touch points associated with those actions and emotions. Some touch points will generate some certain mindset. Some touch points will accelerate the action after this. And after completing this customer journey map, maybe you can have ideas which want to make the customer's life better, like you saw in the video. So this is just an example. Here we have a patient named Harry, and this is the journey of his hospital journey. And first he fell ill. This is the action, and he will search through the internet. But because he at the first time he thought this is just a flu, but after searching through the his status of situation, he changed his mind. This can be some very serious flu like Ebola, etc. So he changed his mind. He suddenly started to search for good doctor to see. So what we are going to do now is to this is something similar to this one. So like for example, this team is working with automotive Singapore, the company name, and looking for a second car, and the person is they're working on is John Lee. So and we prepared actually some actions, beginning action and ending action. So what you're going to do is fill the actions between those two actions, and also work with capturing mindset and touch point using the post-it. Everybody clear about this? What are you going to do? Okay.
You comfortable with that?
You got all that? If you have question, please
Feel
ask.
free to ask them. I mean, again, no bad questions here.
Is that a happy face or?
I'm not clear.
Okay.
As a happy face.
With this company, you're working on new start is the telecom company, and you have a customer called Abella, and this is a journey for Abella. And journey starts from
Newspaper announcement.
newspaper announcement iPhone release, and she decided to have iPhone. That is the context, and lots of touch points or lots of emotions can affect her decision making and her next actions until she finally gets and playing with iPhones. So the actions here, you can imagine anything. Yeah, what she does actually. So but please try to simulate you as Adela, not talking about yourself because you're male. You're not 22. So please, please behave. Think about. Please look the world from her eyes. and try to think about how actions and emotions. Okay, everyone got that idea?
So you capture that on
Okay.
post-it notes, yeah? Do it on post-it notes.
Okay. So please use post-it, and first we capture the actions and the emotions, and try to get the touch points as well. And after you think you're completed with the customer journey map, try to have ideas. Okay. You have
30 minutes.
30 minutes. Okay. Ideas, yeah, ideas as well. Yeah, because of the picture here is different from yours. We draw ideas down here. Yeah, simultaneously capture the idea if you can. Yeah.
One more time, let's do it again. Blow my mind, do it again. And then it arrives, the moment before, the anticipation. You know it's like, wait for it, wait for the build up, and then